Welcome to the NZ Nomad Runner podcast. I'm Chris Lucas.
And I'm Charlotte Milne.
We are run coaches at CMF Running, where we coach runners of all abilities to any surface, any distance races. Today, we are talking about one of the age-old, frequently asked questions for Tarawera runners. Should I use poles? So today we're going to talk about that. But first of all, I just want to say a massive thank you, as always, to our one-on-one coach runners and CMF Run Club members for your support. Without your guys' support, making content like this would not be possible. So thank you so much to you guys. And also, before we get started, just want to mention to you guys that on the weekend of the 25th of January, which is 3 weeks out from Tarawera, we're doing a community training weekend where there's free group runs that are open to anyone in the community who want to come, and they'll be on the Tarawera course. We're just in the process of finalising a few details with the local buddies in Rotorua, but we're almost there, and so it's all looking like a go ahead. And we're going to make it a bit of a fundraising thing, and fundraise a few funds for the Rotorua Trails Trust, who look after all the trail network that we get to enjoy running and riding on in the Whakaweta Forest. So it'll be for a great cause. So keep a lookout for that coming up.
Yeah, and that's for mainly the 100k and 100 mile runners.
Yeah. So we'll be doing a Friday evening run. Will be like a sort of 75, 90-minute run, just local in Rotorua. The Saturday one, is for your sort of 100k, 100-mile runners. That'll be starting out Okataina way, which is 120-odd Ks through the miler and 60-odd Ks through the 100k. And then that'll come into the sort of redwoods, really. So you get about a marathon. It's a sort of 6-7 hour, depending where you finish, run. And then Sunday, there's a couple of hours there too, in the local trails in Whakaweta as well, which will sort of be the earlier parts of the course, or perhaps an out and back on the Tarawera Trail, something like that.
Awesome, sounds fun. Sounds like that bit from Okataina to Blue Lake is a very key section, whether it's you're doing the 100k or 100 mile. So it's always good to go back there each year and get some training on that section.
Yeah, that Western Okataina is a really great section to recce, isn't it? Because it's, you get that sort of, I think that's about 300 and something metre climb sort of out of Okataina. So it's just a good, I think that's spread out of about, from memory, 5 or 6 Ks, isn't it? You got a 350 odd metre climb. It's not ridiculous, but it's just it's just good to see it. It's at the stage of the race where it's at, and and just to run that Western Okataina is good too, because you've got about 16 odd K in between Okataina and Miller Road aid station, so good to stretch of running there at that part of the race as well, in between aid stations. So
awesome.
Keep a lookout for all of that. So on to today's topic: should I use poles?
Should you? Should I?
Have you ever used poles?
I haven't ever used poles, but I haven't done. Last time I did a 100k was 4 years ago, in 2020, and I didn't use them then. And I have done plenty of missions, and
plenty of mountain missions.
Plenty of missions and some non-miler training. And I've also coached clients to 100Ks and also the miler distance. And I personally have never used poles, and I have never actually had a client that has used poles as well.
Yeah, same. I haven't had many pole users, aside from like the mountain ultra, like mountain 100-mile sort of stuff, like the UTMB. We had James at UTMB this year.
That's different.
Yeah. That is like it's a hike jogging race.
So we would
poles are recommended for that.
For sure. You definitely classify the Tarawera as a runnable 100k and 100 miler in
ultra terms.
Ultra terms.
Yeah.
you will obviously be doing a lot of walking, but you won't be climbing a mountain as such.
Yeah.
Which is when poles, could become very handy. In those kind of races.
Yeah, and I just want to say as well, like what we are talking about before is, in the last 5 years. So going back 5 years ago, on standing on course at race weekend at Tarawera, you would see not that many people with poles, but now, oh my god! Last year I was at Okataina during the night, and so seeing those sort of 30+ hour miler finishes come through, and everyone had poles. Everyone had poles. So I found that quite amazing. How that's kind of changed in the last 5 or so years, is how so many people, are using poles now compared to what used to be.
Yeah, and that could be for a variety of reasons. I suppose sometimes we do like to, buy
stuff,
whether it's for running or for other things. So could be part of that. It could be more range of runners obviously have come into the ultra scene. So I suppose with this topic today, there's no right or wrong whether I should use poles or shouldn't I use poles. There's some things that you can do leading up in terms of your training that could dictate if you need poles or not need poles. And I think that's kind of something that we're going to speak to today is, the deciding fact before you rush out the door and get those poles is giving some of, the things we're going to talk about in terms of your training to see if you need poles or not need poles, because there's some pros and cons of using poles that you may not have thought of initially before you've gone out the door and bought them.
Yeah, it's like peer pressure to buy them because I think other people are using them, so I need them or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's a number one fundamental that you'll hear us talk about time and time again is is do the training. If we, do the training, the run training, the specific training, and we're doing strength training and mobility work and all that stuff, then we do our best chance to have a successful race outcome and navigate all the various variabilities that dictate that outcome or that have that can influence that outcome. And so doing the training and all that kind of stuff strips back all those variables, including the need to have poles or not due to fatigue or body breakdown in the miler.
That's essentially what poles are there, is to take some of the pressure.
Takes the load off the legs, I guess.
Yes, because you're using your arms to propel yourself forward. I was just going to say, I did have one small go with poles a few years ago, and there is a technique to be able to get into the rhythm of using poles. So if you are going to be using poles, you definitely want to train with poles. Don't sort of buy them last minute or just keep them in your sort of pile of
untested kit.
Gear, and because you're probably going to get sore as triceps. You need to train your arm muscles to use poles really. Get some adaptations.
Definitely.
Yeah,
and just the mechanics of how you're going to move your arms and all that. Yeah, there's some neuro pathways to open up there, and because I have used them as well. So late in the fault line miler this year, I latched onto my buddy and I noticed he had poles in his bag and he wasn't using them. And we at one of the aid stations, I was like, "Oh, can I use your pole?" And I actually found them so hard, initially getting going, but just where I was at in the race, it was just 5-10 k's to go. It was a nice mental thing to focus on in that instance. Did I need them? Well, no, I didn't need them. I was going to complete the race anyway, but I did find them a beneficial thing in that particular time. But I wouldn't. My personal preference on poles is I don't look to use them. If I was doing a mountain, same thing again. If I was doing a mountain race, then I would. But generally not. So when I have tried them out, in just training or missions or whatever, I've found them annoying. Like it's just my own personal thing because it's just another thing. It's more weight, like it's more kit on your back when you're not using them. And then there's the fiddling around with them, like so playing around with your, if you're playing around, buggering around with your kit in your bag all the time, then you're not really moving forward the best that you can be. And there's like mental bandwidth, like going into fiddling around with stuff, in a race setting, like for a miler, especially, like you want to reduce the mental output of like fiddling around with the kit. And so I found that annoying. And then I also found them annoying because then they're in your hands. And
you run like this.
Yeah, and you're like running with them and you got them, and then fine, you're using them on a climb. That's cool. And then it's like, okay, the climb's done now. Now what? And then you sort of fall into this trap of sort of holding onto them awkwardly because then you can't be stuck putting it back in the thing properly. And then it's like you want to have a drink or some food, and then that's getting in the way. And that I found it actually prevented me from fueling adequately. Because I'm like, oh, well, I got this thing in these other things in my hands. I'll just wait until I get over here, and then I'll have some food. And so it was actually delaying my fueling opportunities like along the way too, because it was just more stuff to deal with. And
makes sense.
I just found them annoying, like from that perspective. So I guess in the setting of like that mountainous 100-miler, where you would use them, it's a different kind of race. You can pause a bit more to do those fueling things, and because the attrition, the length of time you're out there is just longer anyway. So those little micro breaks to fiddle around are probably not a bad thing. Whereas if you're doing a runnable sub 24, sub 26 hour miler, or you just want to get from point A to point B, on your feet as quickly as you can.
And, for sure. That's right. Like when. Yeah, so I think that's another thing to speak to today. Like if you need poles, is like the time that you're going to be out there. So say if Chris, sub 24 hour at sort of like Tarawera, he goes and does, I'm not UTMB or like maybe the Spectacle or some mountainous thing. And you get to like the, 30, 32 hour, that's that you're the same runner, right? You're the same runner, same person,
just out there for longer.
So that's when poles can come appropriate. And I suppose if you're a person in Tarawera, if you're like that 32 plus miler, and maybe that's getting towards that 20 plus 100k,
definitely,
that's quite a long time out there. And so that's when poles may become appropriate. For a person or a runner, I should say, like that, because the rate of fatigue is going to be setting in then, and
and just the time on your feet, and just
the type of runner,
the amount of hiking that you're going to be doing anyway. So your hiking to run ratio is going to be more hiking, obviously, than someone who's like sub 24, for example. And that's where poles came from, right? That's their origins. Hiking poles. It's a hiking thing that's made its way into ultra running, so that's the origins. So they really help with walking, like really well.
Because it's helping you, if you think about when you're running, there's a lot of momentum, right? The running is propelling you forward. When you're walking, there's less momentum. And so, poles create more momentum. So you actually get to move forward with more ease.
And then that's a good point actually, because they do feel quite natural using poles when you are hiking on flat also. You can get into a real nice rhythm hiking with poles on flat, but with running, I don't know. It's just like
sure,
a bit annoying. More on the climbs, I think. Which there's just not many climbs at Tarawera.
For sure.
And
I think with another sort of with the training, so it's like there's the run training, which doing the run training, but also doing some strength training. So how you also prolong fatigue is by doing strength training. So another thing when you get fatigued that poles may help you with is like obviously your posture. So it kind of keeps you upright. But if you've done strength training in your training, as part of your training, and you've included like especially upper body strength training, then you should be able to hold your upper body or shoulders back for longer, again prolonging that fatigue. And then when you start collapsing in your shoulders, like it shuts off the airways, your lungs, and then it becomes harder to breathe. So if you're able to like be out there for longer with somewhat, obviously everyone's going to fatigue, but somewhat with a more upright posture, then it's going to be easier to run or move forward, walk. So adding in regular strength training when you are doing 100k and 100 mile is actually really important to sort of create a barrier of not needing poles, and therefore, like Chris said, not having to sort of like play around with them much, because ultimately if you don't have to worry about poles, then you don't have to like waste time or use energy to use poles, think about poles, put them away. Where do I do them now?
So is it
risk of not hydrating? Do I need to use them now? What do I do with them now? Throw them in the bush.
Yeah, for sure. So if you're like if you're sort of battling the cutoffs, you're sort of a rare packer, you're going to be hiking a lot. So if you're going to be that plus 20 hour, 100k and plus 32 to 36 hour 100 miler, then I think poles probably are a good idea for you as an individual, because that hiking thing that we talked about. For other folks, I mean, one of our miler runners last year, Ricky, he did around 32-ish hours there, I think, and no poles. He was actually fine. Ricky
did heaps of strength training.
Oh yeah. So this is the thing about Ricky. So he did lose, we were sort of shooting for under 30. That was the sort of we were at with him. But his day was just a bit longer. Had a major cramp. So basically, wasn't able to run the last big chunk. Actually,
60
k's, I think,
because of the course last year. That bit between Buried Village and where was it? And like sort of Okataina was out in the flat, out in the open.
Yeah.
You remember, like when we?
I was coming back the other way. Remember, so they were coming from Ruruwhakaitu to Buried Village.
Yes, yeah.
It was a very hot patch. Yeah,
and I think a lot of runners struggled in that area. We were sitting at Okataina and we heard like Okaraka, sorry.
Yeah.
And we were just hearing about people that had gone through that section. Yeah, come out and they're just like, I had a 2-hour nap. It was really hot, and Ricky was kind of, struggling in that time as well.
Yeah, it was like a real hot patch there. And that was on the Tarawera Trail, wasn't it? Yeah, coming back from Isthmus to Buried Village. Yeah, really hot patch. And also, it is, I think the actual course is longer there. There was a couple of Ks extra in it, so a lot of folks ran out of water. There's a big stretch between aid stations. Hot, and there's some folks perhaps went out of it too fast as well. You're running too fast in those earlier sections. That particular course was all that runnable flat stuff earlier on. So it's all that kind of thing. So that kind of got Ricky there as well, that heat and but he despite all of that and hiking that last 60 odd Ks, a huge amount of hiking, he was moving forward fine, actually, like hiking. And I asked him afterwards, I was like, so did you feel like you needed poles? And he's like, no. Because we did do the training. That's what he was saying, like did do the strength training, did do the run training, and was able to complete the race without the requirement for poles.
Yeah, I was just like laughing at one of the remarks of what Ricky said about strength training. He's like, man, there's just so much shoulder stuff, because I was prescribing his gym training at the time. And I'm like kind of a fan of doing like shoulder stuff, because I think it's like really good for
got to hold the vest on the back.
Just like things like I was just talking about before. So all those shoulder stuff, whether it's squat push kind of thing, it paid off.
And like, because when you have all your compulsory gear and your vest on the back, it's quite a lot of weight, and you're moving like this for 24, 30 plus hours.
Great,
It's a lot of, it's just a lot.
your arms. I don't underestimate how much you use your arms in running.
Yeah, and that's before you touch a pole.
yeah.
That's before you touch any poles.
And get a good tricep workout.
Yeah. So what about other people that use poles? I mean, I've seen plenty of, I think James last year, he used poles. He was running 22-hour miler. And that's just sort of coming from someone that likes to use poles anyway in their training. And so, yeah, that's where the personal preference sort of comes into it. If you're an individual that just uses them, perhaps you live in a hilly area where your training ground is sort of the more mountainous type. And so you're just naturally using them in your runs or in your training, and that's you just like to use them, and then so use them, that kind of thing. That's cool. And I've got a couple of athletes that I'm coaching for the 100K and the 100 miler this year, a couple of the ladies, and they have some poles, but they're not necessarily using them in their training. But they do just have some poles. Somewhere along the line, they bought some poles. Pole peer pressure, perhaps.
Yeah.
And so they have some poles. So with
PPP?
them... Yeah. PPP. Pole peer pressure. So with them, what we're sort of talking about is just having them in the drop bag, Okataina. Optional extra, If you feel like on the day, it's like an optional extra. It's like having that spare pair of shoes as an optional extra, And it's like if you feel like on the day you want to change things up for going over Okataina, then fine. If you don't feel like you need them on the day, then fine. So the plan is to not use them, but the plan is just to have them there if they feel like they need them, That's sort of a different scenario.
Yeah, for sure. So hopefully that's cleared up some, should I or shouldn't I use poles? Questions that you may have floating around in your brain as you're busily getting ready for Tarawera miler or 100K. Ultimately, it just sounds like there's no right or wrong if I should or shouldn't. And, the key takeaways is like making sure that you do the training or training, the run training and the strength training, and don't rely on your poles instead of doing those two things.
Yeah.
Putting the poles before the training, you know?
Put the training up the top.
Yeah.
The preparation, and the kit sort of starts to come up, You sort of have your training, your run training, your strength training, and your fueling, your daily nutrition. There's all these other things that come into priority, ahead of starting to get down the list of
work from the inside out.
Yeah. Cool. So that's about it. Keep a lookout for, we're going to do more podcasts for Tarawera preparation. Plenty more coming up. If you are someone that's not training with us, perhaps you're self-training and you want to do a one-off consult just to help prepare yourself for race day, you can hit us up about that sort of stuff too. We do that kind of thing. Sometimes we get folks from overseas traveling over and they want to do a one-off consult talking about local stuff for Rotorua on the course and race day, and that's fine. Reach out to us for that. We'll put our links below for that, and we'll chuck our links below for CMF Run Club and one-on-one run coaching.
And I was also going to say, if you are curious about strength training, and you actually just want a strength plan and not necessarily being coached by us, there is also, I have a strength plan that's on Training Peaks, which is to buy as a one-off. So we will also put links to that down below if that is something that you're interested in doing, opposed to going fully on board with run coaching as well.
Totally.
It's just adding some strength training into your regime.
Yes. And also, if you are looking at doing something at fault line, that's coming here too. So as we record this, we are about 16 weeks.
Woo!
Yeah, so it's coming 16 weeks till Fault Line Ultra. So if you're looking at doing something there, we're going to have our training group and all that sort of stuff coming up for that too. If you're doing the 100K or the miler there, you reach out to us. And same thing again, community training runs, all that sort of stuff in the pipeline down in the Wellington and Kapiti regions.
And probably a video if I should use poles for Fault Line.
Yeah.
But that's to come.
Yeah. Let's get Tarawera out the way.
Yeah. Don't put the cart before the horse.
But yeah, catch you on the next one.
See you later.
See ya.
Bye.